So in this video we're going to tackle your log cabin block from lesson 4. So presumably you've already cut all your fabrics in class. I've just kind of spread everything out here just sort of roughly as it's all going to go together. You can see you've got your 2.5 square of your fat quarter 5 in the center. Next to that is your 2.5 inch square of fat quarter 1, and then of course all your fat quarter 1 pieces are on the left side here, and then you've got all of your fat quarter 3 pieces on the right side here. And the way that we put this together is sort of just in a clockwise motion. So you start with your 2.5 inch squares, and then you're going to put your 2.5 by 4.5 of fat quarter 1, then your 2.5 by 4.5 of fat quarter 3, then it's our 2.5 by 6.5, 2.5 by 6.5, 8.5, 8.5, followed by 10.5. So you're just getting larger and larger, and I like to lay it out like this just to make sure that, because it's easy to sort of, because you've got 2 pieces of each color that are the same length, and it's easy to get them mixed up. So I usually find if I just kind of lay them all out first and just work around clockwise, that usually keeps me right. And every time I put a new piece on, I'm always pressing towards the outside of the block, right? So when I sew these together, I'm going to press that way. When I sew these together, I'm going to press that way. And every time I add a new piece on, I'm just adding towards that new piece, or towards the outside of the block. Okay, so let me get started with sewing these together. Okay, so I've sewn the first 2 pieces together, 1/4 inch seam allowance, and pressed that towards that fat quarter 1. And now you can see, now that I've sewn those together, it's the same length as this piece here. So again, right sides together, and now I'm going to sew this one together. I would suggest, although there aren't any seams that you need to match up, do put a pin at either side just to make sure that the 2 ends meet. Okay, so now I've sewn that 3rd piece on, so we're just going to keep working our way around clockwise. So now this one's going to be the next one to go on, then that one, etc., etc. Okay, this time I've sewn 2 pieces on already. Now remember, every time you place this down, you want to make sure you put it in the same way, because every time you get to a square, it's very easy to accidentally set it down the wrong way and then go to put the next piece on. Of course it fits, even though that's not the right place. So remember always to have it with your 2.5 inch squares sort of side by side there. Okay, so now I'm just going to go ahead and sew on the next 2 pieces. Okay, so I've sewn on the next 2 pieces, and so now I've just got these last 2 ones to go on now. Remember, we're still, every time we add on a piece, we're pressing away from the center. And remember also, you know, even as this gets larger and larger, every time you go to sew on this next piece here, it should be the same length as what you've got there. And if it's not, you still need to keep kind of working on your seam allowance until it is every single time. And that's one of my favorite things about log cabin block, is you can kind of keep checking yourself as you go along and making sure that your seam allowance is correct. Okay, I'm going to sew these last 2 on. Okay, so now I've got the whole log cabin block is put together. Now the log cabin block, for where it's going in the quilt, it isn't quite big enough at the size that we've made it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to add some spacers around it. So you've got your 1.5 by 10.5 and your 1.5 by 12.5 of background fabric. So we're going to sew the 1.5 by 10.5 to the sides, press those seams out, and then we're going to sew the 1.5 by 12.5 to the top and bottom and press those out. Okay, so I've sewn the 2 side spacers on, and as you can see, I've pressed those seams out towards the outside of the block, and then the last 2 to go on are going to be these 2. And remember, again, put a few pins in there just to hold everything together as you sew it, and I'll bring that back all put together. And there we go, that's our completed log cabin block. I've just put those last 2 background strips on, and that one is all finished and good to go into the quilt.